Hi, everybody. Let me switch my view. I just realized I had it like focused on the speaker. There we go. Now we'll be recording. We'll see both of us next to each other, hopefully. So I'm here with my friend Leslie, who I know through Facebook and through a group of people, the Awakening Women Institute, which is a really lovely group of women focusing on feminine awakening. But I don't know if we're going to talk much about that today. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. We're here to just talk about what we love. And we already started talking about nature and how we love nature, or how you love nature. What did you do today that you loved? Anything?
Today, let's see. I've spent a good part of the day at my desk, actually, putting together some information for my students for the upcoming year of what we're doing. I had a big spirit download several months ago that sort of mapped out what 2022 was going to look like in my program.
Oh, amazing. Yoga training or yoga teacher training program? Or
I have done yoga teacher training for many years. And then with the pandemic and all of the changes there, that has kind of shifted away. It may come back. But I have a program called The Sanctuary, where I'm teaching yoga and meditation and holding space for people to come together online.
Cool.
And it started, when we all had to figure out how to go online to be together.
Yep.
And it's continued for this year and a half, people coming together a couple of times a week to practice and share and learn and grow. And, my intention is to, in some way, help us all to embody this human journey that we decided to come and do for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder, like, why did I do that?
What were we thinking?
But really, I actually love being human. I think
I want to hear more about that.
do you?
I do, but first I'm curious, can you give us like a teaser of what's coming in 2022 for this program?
Sure.
I'd like to hear it.
It's called A Year of Magic and Meaning. Yeah. So when I teach yoga, sometimes I hate to actually say I'm a yoga teacher, because there's an idea that people have immediately about that.
Yep.
Oh, you're a yoga teacher. Yeah, I really need to get more flexible. Can you show me a good stretch for blah, blah, blah? And I'm good at those things. I can do those things. But what I really want to do with people and for people is has so much more to do than with stretching a particular muscle. If I am going to help you stretch, I actually would like to help you stretch your mind and find some of the magic and the potency of what it is to be human, and like to expand your perception about that. That's what I'm constantly doing. Like you said, we were talking a little bit about nature. That's what I feel like nature does for me. Like when I go out and I'm with trees, they have a very different way of being on the planet than most people that I meet. And so that, like, just that simple, like being there in nature. And I keep looking, so out my window, there's a big pine tree. So I'm like looking, hello tree, help me here. What am I seeing? Yeah, just that sense of being other than how the day-to-day things that we all have to do to get our lives done sort of encourage us, and to be otherly encouraged to like look at things in a new way and to be present. So that's a kind of a buzzword, I think, at least in the communities and the circles that I roam around in. to be present. And so I guess that's the exploration. Well, what the heck does that actually even mean to be present? You know?
So the group will go through a process of discovery of what that means over the next year.
Yeah, oh, I got completely off of that, but yeah,
Yeah.
kind of it all comes together like that. And I do feel like there's like this magical element that we sometimes miss when we get engaged in the stuff that we like I said, the stuff that we're doing to stay today, but that even that has so much energy and potential in it for us for experiencing. So
Mhm.
I guess that's what I like to explore is how can we do even those mundane everyday things in a way where we're allowing ourselves to sort of taste the magic.
Mm,
Yeah.
mystical.
Yeah.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mystical. Like the moons,
Like the moons.
the moons and the, you know, finding a way that our little star-shaped beings fit in these human bodies.
Yeah. Did you grow up in a mystical tradition or
No.
discover it later?
I grew up in rural Oregon,
Mhm.
and I would say I can't really think of anything mystical outside of what was happening inside of me that was really going on in the world around me.
Yeah.
In fact, I grew up in a family and really in a like rural culture where something like yoga and yoga certainly wasn't as popular as it is now, but something like yoga was a little weird. I
Yeah.
actually remember sneaking to watch Lilias Folan on TV. Yeah. So, and that was not like super mystical what she was doing. She was doing yoga poses and yoga stretches.
Yeah.
Um, but I did sneak to watch it because my family would have thought that was quite strange.
Yeah.
But I spent a lot of time outside and on my horse roaming the hills because I
Mm,
can do that. We lived way out in the country
mm.
with a lot of just land around us that I could spend in. So maybe that's part of where that mysticism developed. But I in my 20s, I started doing yoga
Mm.
and just had the great fortune to have teachers and people around me who, and the yoga that I was doing, it wasn't necessarily mystical yoga either. It was just,
Yeah.
regular yoga at a yoga studio. But there was always an element of it for me that felt like a portal into spirit, into
Mhm.
the whateverness of possibility and life outside of our day to day.
Mundane stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was my first portal too. In my 20s, I found a
That's,
yoga class. Have you heard of Kripalu? Do you know Kripalu?
I,
Yeah, I
I
lived in
haven't been
Massachusetts.
there. Oh,
So I went to a Kripalu style yoga studio, and it was the right amount of spiritualness for me then. They would read poems by Rumi, and it wasn't deep in yoga. We weren't going deep into any of the practices or any of the teachings. It was a yoga pose class, but there was a little bit in there that helped me begin to look inside more. Yeah.
my first yoga teacher was more from the Iyengar tradition, I think, and
Mhm.
that was my start. So it's very physically oriented,
Yep.
very, alignment and put your right foot here and your left foot there and turn it this way and all of that. And my first teacher also brought in that poetry. It was, I think my love of Rumi was probably started there. And then I remember that she always used to say, and I don't know why exactly that this seems sort of mystical and spiritual, but it like washed over my body in a way that felt like that. the end of Shavasana, she would say, and with both nostrils wide open.
Mm,
So I don't know, that's a memory that I have that's so
yeah.
strong, and it had that that energy, you know, that felt like it was really inviting me into something that was a different experience that I'd ever had before.
Yeah. Wide open. I mean, those words alone, never mind the nostril part. But
Right.
the,
I
but
wasn't
the,
accustomed to people talking about my nostrils, first of all,
right.
but
It was brand
also
new.
wide open.
I mean, that wide open is like literally pointing you home.
Yeah, yeah. I had never thought of it exactly that way before, but I love that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did you ever go to India?
I went to India. Yeah. I
What'd you
spent
think?
I spent some time in Nepal, and then a few years later, I went to India.
Hmm.
Um, what I think, oh my gosh, you know, have you been there?
Not yet. I'd love to go.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so everything, right? There's so much there. And I went with a group of Ananda, or well, actually, they weren't Ananda. They were the SRF. The now I can't think of what that stands for. But anyway, a group of Yogananda devotees,
Mhm.
which I haven't actually been so much in that part of the yoga community, but I had a friend who was guiding this trip and was able to go. So we, it was very much a journey, visiting these Yogananda sites that were,
Wow,
you know,
neat.
staying in ashrams, and yeah, so it was very powerful in that way. Um, you know, and then we got to see a lot of the cultural sites, and we were there for the Mahakumbh Mela, which is
Oh, wow.
the big festival and gathering at the Ganges, and um, we took a dip with about a million other people in the Ganges River. So,
Wow. What did you think of that experience being in the water there?
mm, uh, it was interesting because there were some people that were in the group that would not even consider going in the water. I mean, it's a lot of people
Yeah.
that had been traveling there over the course of the excuse me, the whole gathering was, you know,
Mm.
days and days, many people there. Um, felt like there was no way I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
There,
Right.
there, and all
I'd
the
do it
people
too.
were there, and um, you know, and I don't know, maybe it's the, you know, mystical part of me, or the fanciful thinking part. I just
Mm.
felt like couldn't possibly get sick, like
Right.
the dip in the Ganges in such a auspicious time.
Hmm.
Um, and it was very thrilling just to
Mm.
be there with that number of people. And um, yeah, I think later, you know, that was at a time, when was it? In 2012. So it was at a time before we were having as many conversations as we're having about cultural appropriation and all of that. So there's a part of my mind now, just as you're asking me that, that's sort of going into that. Like, I recognize myself too as this like really excited white woman yoga teacher who was like so happy to like get in the Ganges with all these other people. So, you know, I didn't actually have those thoughts at that time,
Yeah.
but I have them now.
Later. Later you thought them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you well, the one thing that is interesting about cultural appropriation, and that whole conversation, um, I understand the importance of being respectful of people's culture, but I doubt that anyone would have seen you as being a culturally appropriative person. I mean, you were there with full open heart, embracing their ritual and being welcomed into it. I mean, nobody was like, well, you're not really Hindu, you don't belong here. And you did it anyway. Um,
Yeah, it felt like it at the time. And I think that those kinds of experiences, but also just I've been doing yoga for a really long time. I started
mm,
practicing when I was 24. So it's over 30 years that I've been doing yoga, and I've been
mm,
steeped in it, in those first 10 years or so, maybe less so, but um, it was enough of a calling and something that was so important to me that I quit my job and I quit my real
yeah,
job, and became a yoga teacher. And I've been doing that full time. And,
yeah.
you
You're a
know,
yogi. That's who
so
you are.
yeah, so it feels like that. So sometimes the conversation's actually a little confusing,
Mhm.
and I think that it's probably good that it's confusing
Right.
because um, it establishes me then, or any of us who are really paying attention in asking the questions
Mhm.
and in um, sort of opening our own minds and perspective about what that even means. And I think that there's a lot of individuality that we have to kind of decide individually what that means to us, but that we
Mm.
can't just sort of encapsulate and say, well, this is important to me, so I'm not the one
Right.
who's doing that, that
That's
there's
true.
that, just like all of life, that there's the both sides of it, the paradox, the whole realm. And somehow we have to, and I think this is what I hope to do with yoga for myself and my students too, is like expand the capacity that we have to hold the ends of the spectrum,
Mhm.
what's happening, so that we're not just willing to stay like in the center where we're comfortable, but
Yep.
to actually stretch and go into the places that are not so comfortable too.
Mhm.
Mhm.
What a great opportunity you had. I'd love to do that for, just as I was beginning to think, I'd like to go to India. I think I'm ready. Um, COVID. So it's
Yeah,
delayed
yeah. I was
someday.
actually thinking about trying to go with Shamali, our trip.
Yeah. Yep. I
Yeah.
would have loved to do that too.
Mhm.
Um, for me, being a really sensitive person, I wanted to be prepared to meet the suffering consciously.
Hard.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that was really the most challenging, to not, well, I was going to say to not feel heartbroken, but that's actually not what happens or really what I even want, but to be able to tolerate the heartbreak,
Yeah. Yep.
being in the face of that suffering. Yeah, yeah. And to not either like turn and run away from it, but also not get completely um, sort of bowled over by it, to be able to keep traveling. Yeah.
Did you find that the suffering in India was higher or greater than the suffering here, or just different kind of suffering?
I think that as a white person traveling in India, what happens is it's not so much like, is it greater or is it a different kind? Although I would say both of those are, probably true.
Mm,
But it's more like the way that you're confronted with it,
mm, mhm,
right? Because here, um, certainly you see, and I lived um, in Portland, where there is a lot of homelessness and that kind of suffering. And so you see people living on the streets, or you
mhm,
see people standing at the, you know, exit or entrance to a freeway or at a excuse me, at a traffic light or whatever, with a sign asking for money, all those kinds of things. So you see that.
Mm.
But in India, excuse me, as a tourist also,
Yeah.
people like come directly to you and like hold onto your body and ask, and there's children and they're um clearly suffering. And
Yeah.
then there's also, and I think this happens to a degree here too, but it was very striking to me there. There's also all the people who are constantly warning you that they may or may not be suffering. They may be,
Mm.
sent there by some adult who just is preying on tourists.
Sure.
So trying
Mm.
to discern.
How do you figure out what to do?
Exactly. Yeah.
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 I don't know. I think you know who Sadhguru is? Have you heard of him? Yeah. I heard him say once that people in America or in the Western world suffer a lot more than Indians. We just don't suffer from hunger and poverty to the same degree. We suffer much more mentally and emotionally. And that suffering is a little more difficult to fix.
Yeah. 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 That strikes me as very true.
Right? We think that we suffer less because maybe we have our basic needs met, or most of us do.
We have the privilege of suffering more.
We suffer in a different way.
It really is, because we do have those basic needs met, and so
Yeah.
then we end up, and in our minds at a whole nother level.
Yeah. How ironic, huh? We're here for different lessons, that I guess in this incarnation. If we have our basic needs met, then we do get the privilege of exploring other dimensions, maybe.
Yeah,
Mm.
maybe.
Do you have a sense that you've been Indian in another lifetime, or anything in another lifetime?
I didn't have a sense there. Like I've had the feeling before of I've been here.
Mm.
And one of those was actually some friends of mine. This was many years ago. I think I was in my late 20s at the time. Some friends of mine went to Peru,
Mm.
and they did a slideshow when they came
Mm.
home and showed pictures. And I was enthralled, and I felt I lived there, and I felt like I had, I am a yogi in this lifetime, and don't practice shamanism specifically, although that has been a draw at times. And I feel like that maybe that like past life mystical tradition somehow is somewhere in me.
Mm.
And then the other time, and again, maybe this is, well, I won't paraphrase it around like that, but also when I read The Mists of Avalon, I felt like I was
Mm-hmm.
there. Do you remember that book?
I do. Yes.
It was one of those like kind of
Priestess
first
types.
openings again,
Yeah.
like those first openings to the another realm of how to see ourselves and what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I've had a number of those experiences where
wow.
I would remember. Yeah, and I went to Ireland and Scotland and felt so at home there. It's like that the earth there, just I could feel it inside me, like I was made of it. Much more than, Massachusetts, where I'm from. It felt more like home. Yeah. And I know the same thing is true for India. I have many memories of lifetimes that I've had there. So when I do go there, I know it's going to be powerful to be there. A nice homecoming.
Yeah, give yourself lots of time.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And India, going back to India, like India is so different. I guess like the US, it's a big continent and there's a
Right.
lot of differences from one place to another. India is like that too. So now I'm curious, who are you from? Southern India or Northern India or
Probably all over. I don't know. I guess I'd have to look at the map and feel it out. I can usually do that. I can usually look at a map and have a sense of, where I would have been living in a time. But I want to circle back to being human. Like, did you always love being human?
I always love being human.
Were you always glad to be in a human body?
Hmm. It's a multi-layered question, right? And a multi-layered answer. So I well, I'm just thinking when I was a kid, I didn't grow up in the most healthy of families, like a pretty challenging dynamic in my family. And so, excuse me, drink all my water. There were many times that I didn't like being a human at all.
Yeah.
And that it was very, very challenging being human and being a human kid in that situation. At the same time, I can think of, I would spend a lot of time by myself and outside. And in those times, I like enjoyed exploring and being and all of that. I think that when I talk now about enjoying being human, it comes in part, from the foundation of those experiences. But then also, I've spent a lot of time exploring and studying yoga, but also sort of the energy realm, energy medicine and energetic healing and those kinds of things. And so I think that that's where the distinction in a way comes from me when I talk about being human. It's, I see us like here we are in human form, but that I really recognize that there's a whole nother dimension of our beings that is like completely interwoven and also outside of this human realm that we're living in on the planet. And so it's almost like a little joke with myself, like, I love my human. Yeah. But being human, and I guess the other thing that comes to me around that is that I've been in the yoga community and spiritual community for a long time, and one of my observations is that I've seen a lot of people who, it seems to me, are using those practices to try to get away from being human, and even many of the old teachings and the texts and all that talk about transcendence and all of that. And I feel like I'm really committed, Jamie, to like not trying to transcend being human. Like, how can I just be the best human I could be, and live life on the planet in a way that makes a difference. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's why I came. I think that's why I came into the Awakening Women's group, because I grew up not religious at all, or spiritual. I had a little taste of yoga in my 20s. Much of my 30s was taken up with being focused on having my kids and raising them, and just day-to-day mundane stuff, getting through the day, waking up and doing the same thing again. And then I went through, I began to do therapy And I started to explore spirituality, and the spiritual tradition that I landed in was a mystical Christianity or esoteric Christianity tradition that had sprung out of a teacher in the 70s in California. And it was a very masculine, hierarchical form. Like there were some aspects of the feminine that were taught about and embraced, but it wasn't very earthy or embodied. It's kind of a far out experience of presence. So I was able to develop that kind of Shiva aspect in myself through meditation in that tradition. But I felt cut off from the feminine. And so when I came into Shamali's group and we did all of these practices with being with the energy in our bodies and moving it from the dense form into the into the aura and bringing it back again. And oh my God, it just opened up so many things for me. And that's when I started writing poetry and embracing my, being artistic again and creative. And I felt like juicy, and it was good to be human. It took me a little bit longer to get to I'm happy to be a woman, but I did get there. Yeah, I did get there, but felt really necessary to have that path for me. Like I don't know if I would be where I am today if I hadn't stumbled into those practices.
Was it a stumbling?
Yeah, no, I was led there. I found it.
It sounds like you embraced it right away.
Oh yeah, it felt so natural to me. It was like a language that I always knew, and I had no one to speak it with. There wasn't anyone in my life speaking that way. Just is a natural part of who I am, and who everyone is, of course.
Yeah.
But who I especially showed up to be this time is embodying this energy and being with it, and being able to show it to others. Yeah.
I feel very fortunate to have been led also to Shamali's work and to the Embodied Feminine. For me, it was like another kind of step on the path. Yoga, when I started in the trying to think of when it was. I guess I started practicing yoga in the late 80s. It was all, at least what I was introduced to, all had very much the masculine element, and all the meditation that I did at first was much more around, that Shiva aspect, clear mind, open space, direct focus, just being present. I think it's part of where my curiosity about being present is, because present, at least in those times, I felt like there was a real judgment, like you were supposed to be present in a certain way, or present with a certain kind of thought, or a certain kind of way of being.
Yep.
Yeah. But therapy also, big doorway to open. And I practiced for a long time with a woman who was Native American and taught Native American spirituality. That was kind of and it's sometimes hard to like separate it all out, but it was
what was what?
Similar timing, kind of that came in to my life, and maybe it's why I made yoga for me as a spiritual practice as it is, but it was there. And that was very much a focus on the feminine and femininity, and in that tradition. So from that perspective, and then one of my yoga teacher that I moved into really strong practice with was a man who talked a lot about the feminine, and cool. Everything was about Shakti and the way Shakti moves, and honoring the feminine element. And I I loved that. It really opened some things up for me. And then I think there was one day when I realized, like, I'm learning all of this from a man, and he's actually a very masculine
Yeah.
who still opened me up to that. And so um, from there, I was able to find some women teachers who I feel really grateful to. Shamali being one of them for sure.
Yeah. I always, when I was in Massachusetts, I loved my teachers so much. When I moved to Colorado, there are pockets of beautiful yogic teachings, but they're not close to me. I mean, they're an hour plus away from me. And the rest of the yoga around me is fitness oriented yoga. So I have not found a place to a yogic home here in Colorado. So I just built myself a yoga studio in my house. I just do my own thing.
Yeah, that's
But I miss
impressive.
it. I miss the community, the yoga community, and being in class and practice with other people physically.
I had a yoga studio in the Portland area for a lot of years, and that community element was so helpful for me. I mean, I like sort of like got to build my own community, but for the students too. And it's part of why circling back to the beginning, but
Yeah.
why I started the sanctuary, because I felt at that time, first of all, I had moved away. So a lot of my students were 3.5 hours away. I wasn't seeing them on a regular basis anymore. So it was an opportunity to sort of draw them back in and for us to reconnect. But people were so hungry for community. And I think that there's been an element of surprise that people have found how much we can have connection and community and really create a sense of belonging with one another, even in an online community. And we've seen that, in our work with Shamali. She had to pivot and go online too.
Yep.
I still feel so connected with her, even though I'm not traveling now to go and see her and study with her. But I found that as a teacher also, that that's my intention, is to hold that kind of space so that it doesn't have to be right where
Right.
where
Yeah.
it is that you live. Certainly there's beautiful things about being in person, and in physical um, relationship to other people. But there's a lot that we can do this way too. Even this, you come,
Yeah.
falling out and talking with people and then putting this online. It's a way for us to connect and to get to know each other, even if we never meet in person. There's a depth that is possible. And I really love that. Like, I've never been very good at chit chat or
Right.
like cocktail party talk.
Wow. Right away, I'm like, so let's go into the deep questions. We're skipping all of the, what do you do for a living questions? Yeah. Yeah. I've been working online since 2013. Just because of the nature of the kind of work that I do, which is a little unique, not the hypnotherapy, well, the hypnotherapy, yes, but the body work style. So I've been on Zoom and Skype for a long, long time. And so I've had lots of experience of feeling, really knowing and trusting that the connection is it's, to me, it's the same. It's the same. It's just, there's really no distance between me and you or me and anyone else at all. I think the part I miss about the yoga community, though, is just going into some other physical space ritualistically and having, somebody else telling me what to do and somebody else handing me an eye pillow.
Yeah.
I miss all those like lovely, sweet things that used to happen. But you're right. You can recreate a lot of that online. Just have to hand yourself the yoga eye pillow. That's all.
Yeah.
Reach over and grab it, put it on.
Teacher
Yeah.
can say now, and now get your eye pillow.
Yeah.
Glad you call it an eye pillow, not an eye bag.
People call it eye bags.
Yeah, The first studio that I went to, they called them eye bags, and I'm not sure when I got eye pillows, but was like, oh, this is so nice. I like this
A
eye
lot nicer.
soft.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I can feel myself wanting to go back in time to that yoga studio. I'm gonna have to work on recreating that energy for myself because there's a longing there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So are you gonna do like monthly themes along the way next year, or
Yeah,
how will
that's
you
what we've
structure it?
done. Yeah, this year, this year I did kind of quarterly themes. Sometimes it was a month, sometimes it was by the quarter. We
Mm,
did everything from exploring nature, like doing a month of earth, and a month of water, and a month of air, and a month of fire,
mm,
and then a month of space, which was
mhm.
really fun. Um, and a whole variety of other things. So next year, every month will have its own kind of dedicated theme within this overarching theme of magic and meaning.
Mm,
Um, it's very fun for me because I'm kind of more spontaneous and creative in the way that I teach. It's hard to have a solid structure of like,
yeah, yeah.
we're gonna do this and we're going to do this. And
Bullet points. Yeah.
yeah, I would never have done well as a Bikram yogi where, you do the same 26 poses 2 times in a row. Like it just wouldn't be my thing.
Mm,
So this it allows the students to have kind of this um, overarching, I guess, but this sense of like what possibility there is.
yeah. Cool.
But then also we can take it and break it down a little bit, and you know we'll explore the chakras and other aspects of being an energetic being, being an energetic
Very
being.
cool.
Yeah, and then all the basics of yoga asana and
Mm,
pranayama, or breathing, and mudras, hand gestures, and making sound with mantra and all of that. So
will you go into myth at all?
I actually do, you bring a lot of myth in, and
Mm,
that is, largely influenced by the work that I've done with Shamali.
mhm,
Although the the goddess myths are actually what drew me to Shamali, because I'd been studying goddess mythology for quite a while with some other teachers and kind of on my own. And then I learned about her, and she's kind of opened that all up to a whole nother level for me. But yeah, I love the myths of India,
mm,
and the goddess myths one, but there are a lot of other, I love a nice Ganesh practice, or
mhm.
playing with the energies of Hanuman, the, heart of the world,
Amazing.
monkey bod.
I love it.
Yeah.
So maybe when I share this, would you send me a link to where people could sign up for that if they want to partake in it?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think people might be interested
Oh, great.
in
Yeah.
in following along in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's live classes, all recorded,
Yeah.
so that people can either practice directly with me or
Mhm.
in their own timing. And yeah, I'll send you a link so people could get more information. And then I love to have a conversation, just a short conversation with people who are interested in joining the community, and um, so that I'm sure that I can really meet what they're wanting too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Make sure it's a fit.
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
And it's really important to me, that sort of personal contact. Even my
Mhm.
students who practice primarily with recordings, I feel like, we have a real heart connection, and
Mm.
I know something of them and who they are, and I like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, then you know who you're teaching to. So when you're opening yourself up at the beginning, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Mm.
I know there are a lot of teachers who teach classes, and it's just like, now I'm on screen teaching you this class, and okay, we're done. Goodbye. See you
Yeah.
next time. I've taken a lot of classes that way myself. And it's not so fulfilling for me. I like to actually have a little bit more interaction. So that's actually another opportunity within the program, is that, we have time to talk and commune a little and ask questions or share stories, whatever
No,
it
it's
is.
so great. Oh, I love it. Okay. Yeah, I have a little group of women that I work with on a monthly basis, about 50. I'll for sure share it in there in case anybody wants to be a part of that. Yeah. Great. Yay. Well, thank you for today. I have to go
Lovely
because I have a
talking with
client.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, thank
um,
you so much.
well, let me push stop for now. I'm gonna push pause, so don't go anywhere. Bye, everyone.